Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Mystery Science Theater 3000, episode 1105, The Beast of Hollow Mountain. I think this episode will probably be best remembered for being episode where the monster just doesn't show up for most of the movie, and rightfully so, because the monster really doesn't show up until after, I think there was the last host segment before the end host segment. It took forever. The beast, the titular beast, is barely in this. But I think what I will think of with this episode, and one thing I didn't realize, is this is the first episode where they're completely by themselves with the cast. There's no big guest stars, there's nothing like that. We are just with the cast watching a Mystery Science Theater episode, like we always were. Oftentimes before, they didn't have guests, they didn't have people walk in, and even, weird characters come in. They did a lot, but not every time. Even that was special back in the old days. So this is just what a normal episode would be like, and although I've said that about Time Travels felt like a normal episode, this is what a normal episode would be like. And I think actually through this episode I got more of the newer cast, Jonah, Barron, and Hampton's voices through this than I felt like before. I felt like I got a lot of variety of references, from King of the Hill to silent film jokes, both Sunrise and then a Buster Keaton joke, one after the other almost. I was surprised about Sunrise, A Tale of Two Humans. They just say the title. It was crazy. Various newer references and a ton of Mystery Science Theater 3000 references, from Hinder to how do we make this thing stop, and go, oh, well, he used those parts to make us, and stuff like that. Oh, should we say watch out for snakes? I was just surprised with how many references to Mystery Science Theater they had in this, but they did them so comfortably, like it was part of their sense of humor, which clearly it was. They're referencing it almost the same way they reference King of the Hill or silent film or anything else within this. And it also helps that this movie is fucking bonkers ridiculous, but they seem to have a lot of fun with it and able to bounce off of it so well. I'm really seeing them getting more and more refined at doing this as it goes on, but this for me is an episode that really showcased, I think, their sense of humor. And I know Joel also wrote on this episode in particular, as well as the main cast. It really kind of started to make me really appreciate what makes this newer version of Mystery Science Theater so cool. Something that I think, when we all thought about Mystery Science Theater coming back, I think most people were scared, are they going to make a bunch of Trump jokes or jokes about Justin Bieber and things like that? And obviously the nature of making jokes like that has changed because we have the internet. We have a plethora of them. I don't really want to hear them make jokes about Drake's Hotline Bling. Maybe they do that in a later episode and someone will say that to me in the comments, but I like how they use references. It's very dorky, but also their sense of humor. When Mystery Science Theater was on, I'm not saying the original show is bad, not at all. Clearly I don't, because I'm obsessively going through these, but it seems like they understood how to adapt the riffing to make that humor more relevant, and it works very well, and not in a way that's calling attention to itself. It feels very natural. This episode really showcased that. This is probably one that I can understand. This feels like an episode that I keep hearing from people, and I've experienced with the show, is that oftentimes I will talk about the best ofs, the Manoses, the Laser Blasts, the big episodes, but there's always an episode that someone loves that you're like, oh, I don't even, what's that? And I'd have to go through the Amazing Colossal Episode Guide and go, oh, that one? And this feels like an episode that would be someone's favorite episode, particularly because this movie is super bad. At first it feels like just a B terrible Western with Mr. Joe Cube American going throughout it, which they have a lot of fun with, and then suddenly it becomes a monster movie at the very end, basically. Westerns and horror experimented a couple times. I think it was Billy the Kid and Dracula, and then Frankenstein and Jesse James or something, and those are kind of interesting odd fusions. And Westerns don't really mix in this way with other genres. There are other postmodern ways to do it, but trying to do it this way seemed to not work, as even evidenced in recent films like Cowboys and Aliens. It doesn't really work, or at least no one's found a director who can do it, frankly. I mean, they tried to do it with Lone Ranger, and that worked out. It does give them kind of something to riff on, where it's what is Hollow Mountain? Who is the beast? They're just watching a bad Western. That's pretty much what they're doing throughout it. I mostly consider this movie a Western. The only real interesting trivia about this movie is that this film was the first film with stop motion effect shot in widescreen and color, which is something, I think. Hey, that's sort of cool, I guess. Wasn't as notable watching it look kind of shitty, but you have to, special effects were a lot different in 1956. So there's certain things that I thought were really cool. Particularly, there was a Manifest Destiny joke, which is the kind of joke that Mystery Science Theater can always kind of pull off. But the host segment with the bots in costume was just super odd, and I really loved it. I think that's the kind of like more Adult Swim sort of humor that's more in now, but it didn't do the bizarre kind of, inappropriateness. It was just kind of the bizarre part, and I actually thought that was one of my favorite host segments. And I'm getting more used to the cold opens. I love the painting thing. I'm really in love with the invention exchange, from the disco cannon to the hot hose on the Titanic. It was a little kitschy. I don't think it was the greatest invention exchange, but it was fun. The fashion show, the Joan and the bots talking about monster movies. I recently found out through Leonard Maltin's podcast, which I just listened to before doing, well, not just, but before I shot this review at least, that Baron Vaughn used to do a podcast with Leonard Maltin, which I didn't know. And clearly he's a movie fan. I don't know if he did the silent film jokes. That kind of shows his personality versus Hampton's. As Crow, I'm curious, I don't know Hampton as well. I was just thinking, I feel like I've heard Baron on a lot of podcasts and not as much Hampton, so probably my own fault, or the podcast I listen to. And I love at the end when they do a similar thing with putting dinosaurs in famous movies like My Dinner with Andre, which I feel like My Dinner with Andre has a weird relationship with this show. Like, I feel like they bring it up a lot. Kind of makes me want to rewatch or watch My Dinner with Andre because it gets referenced on here, which is usually a good way to discover things referenced on the show. Beasts of Hollow Mountain is a very fun episode. I don't think it's an all-time classic like Cry Wilderness, but it's like, I think one that I actually rewound it a few times because I was like, this is that funny? I was a little almost surprised. It kind of caught me off guard by how good it was, but so far I have not been disappointed by season 11 at all. 5 episodes in, so I'm like close to halfway, and I'm like very happy with it. And I think this is probably higher up there. I'd probably put this above, like, I might even put this above Avalanche. This might be like my second favorite so far. I really had a lot of fun with it, and every time I bring it up to someone, most people seem to almost forget it, which is odd. And then I say, the Beast of Hollow Mountain, they go, oh right, with the monster that doesn't show up. So I think this one will forever probably be known as that, but I think I'll always remember it as the one that really kind of sold to me. Their kind of sense of humor really highlighted to me. Now I keep referencing King of the Hill because of it was referenced in here, where he's like, that's my purse, I don't know you. It shows the kind of interesting and great references they can have, that both I can laugh at the reference and remember it, and there's just so many great jokes in this. I think this is like an absolute perfect movie choice. The horror western weird subculture that happened in the 50s is definitely something. If they want to do any of the other ones, I welcome it, because they were like not good. They're weird, interesting, odd movies, but they're the perfect kind of oddity for Mystery Science Theater. I think it highlights the kind of fun they can have with these kind of movies, and Beasts of Hollow Mountain was almost like too perfect. It's kind of surprising it didn't make it in the original run, frankly. Beasts of Hollow Mountain, I think, although the movie definitely probably disappointed because of the lack of beasts, and I'm not sure what the Hollow Mountain was, or like, I still don't know. They kept coming up with like, maybe the beast is inside us, that it's love. Although this movie probably disappointed viewers at the time without seeing apparently an Allosaurus, believe it or not. They say it's an Allosaurus, I just thought it was a random T-Rex, but whatever. Despite the fact that disappointing people, I don't think this is a disappointing episode. I think this is a really fun episode, and maybe one that will end up being some individual's favorite episode, and I can honestly see why it would be someone's favorite episode because of its odd, weird mix and its showcase of the new cast and the new version of the show's awesome sense of humor. So if you have seen Mystery Science Theater 3000, episode 1105, The Beasts of Hollow Mountain, and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.